The bond for Empire actor Jussie Smollet has been set at $100,000. Now, Smollet has been charged with disorderly conduct after police say he filed a false police report last month in Chicago. Now, the actor claimed he was attacked by two men who hurled racist anti-gay slurs and looped a rope around his neck. But after weeks of investigating, police say Smollet paid two men to stage the attack because he was unhappy with his salary. For the 360 View, we turn to our political panel, former Georgia State Representative LaDawn Jones and conservative commentator Steve Malzberg. Thanks for joining both of you.
Hi, Scotty.
LaDawn, I have to start with you, obviously. So what do you make of these latest revelations in the Jussie Smollett case?
You know, it's very disturbing. The story started out sounding very weird, but it is truly a slap in the face for the number of Americans who actually experience this type of racism or homophobic slurs. For him to use this as a publicity stunt in order to increase his already very high salary is disappointing, it's hurtful, and I think he's truly going to have to see some type of punishment so he can make this right.
Well, in this case, he did definitely insult a wide variety of groups, including obviously the racism, homophobic, but he also insulted the MAGA, the Trump supporters, because that was a major part that he had put out there, and he obviously has been very vocal in the past. So, Steve, the president even took to Twitter, whether appropriate or not, to say, what about MAGA? Even tagging Smollett in the post. Do you think, what is the fallout, what is the response by Trump supporters, and is it the right response right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people are waiting as they keep finding out. Today we found out a lot of facts. So we found out that, according to the authorities, he actually wanted these brothers, or had these brothers purchase two red hats that look like MAGA hats, Make America Great Again hats. That's part of the purpose. I mean, his salary is one thing, but he was shrewd enough to make sure that he got those Trump supporters in there as well and tried to lay blame on them. You know, I find it interesting that the law only accounts for a minor penalty of 3 years in jail. But he faked a hate crime. Now, I don't favor hate crime legislation. If you get attacked, raped, murdered, you're attacked, raped, murdered. I don't care why. But they should have harsher penalties now for making up, filing a false report about a hate crime, since there are harsher penalties for hate crimes. If he gets 3 years in prison for this, he'll be getting off easy. But again, the media, they're so disappointed that this wasn't true, mostly because this was something else they could have put at Trump's feet.
Well, that's the question, Steve. Ann Coulter, and even conservative media, she followed up by tweeting that all hate crimes are hoaxes. So is this the way all of the right feels and should be feeling following this situation right now?
No. I mean, again, my problem with the designation of hate crimes, like I said, is if, God forbid, a relative of mine is killed or raped, and the guy said nothing, he'll get a lesser penalty than the guy who said something about her race or sex while he was killing or raping her. I don't buy that. But so maybe that's what Ann means. I can't get inside Ann Coulter's head, and it's the last place I want to be, believe me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that feel that same way. So, LaDawn, does this concern you that people in the future won't take these types of crimes or these kinds of victims seriously because of the incidents that have happened?
Absolutely. Already, as my other guest host mentioned, there's already people who don't see the value and don't understand the history of America and why hate crimes are different, why a hate crime or murder based on race or gender or sexual orientation is in fact worse. We know that in this country there were entire communities that were cleansed of black people and certain other races solely based on this same type of rhetoric. So hate crimes are important. Now, I am afraid that it's going to weaken it. I think it's going to strengthen the MAGA argument. And the other thing is also showing another disparity, because we have seen in our recent events several Caucasian Americans making phone calls accusing African Americans of doing something that they weren't in fact doing, committing a crime for selling food out on the sidewalk. There is a balance there, and we want to make sure that America is treating those similar situations similarly.
Well, that's what, are we in a new stage right now, though, where we can talk about obviously racism, we can talk about sexual preference, the hate crimes that are happening, that we know those are there. there, unfortunately, exist in our country. But are we in a new phase where now it's becoming political? Where can those, before taking people out because of where they believe politically and assaulting them, should that also be determined as a hate crime today going forward? And even more religion, not only just for Jewish, for anti-Semitism, but also the Christians being attacked as well as Muslims being attacked. Are we now having to redefine what a hate crime is in 2019 that we might not have had to do a decade ago? And I'll go with you on this, LaDawn.
Very possibly. I think it's something that we need to explore. At the end of the day, we don't want people to commit crimes at all. Right. But when you target someone solely based on some characteristic, whether it's politics or race, I do think that as Americans, that is something that we should shun, something that we should punish to a greater degree. And we have to be able to be flexible. In the 24-hour news cycle and with the introduction of Twitter, everyone being able to get involved and identify themselves in one way or the other is going to stick out more. And if we want to ensure that we're treating everyone the same in this country, particularly when it comes to criminal justice, it's important to identify those characteristics.
Right, and Stephen, I've got to give you the last one on this. Does this rush? A lot of conservatives are pointing out this is right on the heels of what happened with the Covington Catholic student Nick Sandmann and his what they say is a false accusing of him and demonization of him once again. So at this stage right now, is this even more blown up because now you've had two back-to-back headlines of Trump supporters being assaulted because or being demonized just because they support this president?
And you have a person in a Sam's Club in Kentucky, I believe it was. He pulled a gun on a husband and wife who had MAGA hats on. Said it's time to die. I'm all for hate crimes. If religion and race, that's all sexuality, that's covered under hate crime legislation. I think it's time to add MAGA hats, because the left is now saying it's the equivalent of a KKK hood, and you deserve what you get if you wear it. That's dangerous rhetoric, and people are getting hurt.
Well, LaDawn and Steve, there's nothing but pure love from me to you guys. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this last video. We have a ton more great content just like this for you. So if you want more, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. And remember, never stop questioning more.